So let's look at when the equation of our circle isn't so pretty. Here we have this equation. That definitely does not look like our form of a circle. Let's remind ourselves of what our equation circle looks like. It is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. This is our end goal. This is what we want it to look like. So we need to take this here and we need to complete the square to get it to look like this. So what we're going to do is 5 steps. And you're going to do these 5 steps a lot. I would say if there is any part of 5.2 lesson, this problem we're about to do is the most important part of the whole lesson, because you're going to be doing these 5 steps throughout the entire chapter. Every single day, we're going to be doing these 5 steps. So go slow. If you need to pause me to write things down, do so, but you really need to get these 5 steps written down. So we're going to start with step 1, which is where we're going to gather like terms. So basically, I'm going to gather all the x's together, gather all the y's together, and anything that doesn't have an x or a y, I'm going to leave out. So gather my x's together. I have a 3x squared minus 6x. And then I'm going to kind of do a little bar here to separate it, just for my mind. Then I'm going to gather the y's together. And then do another bar, so those are all my y's. And then I'm going to do everything that doesn't have an x or a y. Now, you will notice that this problem is already equal to 0. If your problem that you get in your homework or on your test is not equal to 0, you will want to do that first step of bringing everything to the same side so that it does equal 0. So we have everything on the same side, and we did step 1. We gathered our like terms. Check. Now, step 2, and you may not always have to do this step. This step isn't always necessary, but you need to get x squared and y squared by themselves. So if there's a number in front of the x squared or a number in front of the y squared, you need to take it out, get rid of it. If your x squared and y squared are already by themselves, you can skip this step. But in this case, x squared and y squared are not by themselves. So we're going to do step 2, take the 3 out, so that I can get the x squared and the y squared by themselves. So I take a 3 out of this one, and I'm left with x squared minus 2x. Take a 3 out of that one, and I'm left with y squared plus 2y. And I'm leaving my 4 alone. I haven't touched that yet. So there's step 2. We got the x squared and the y squared by themselves. Now, step 3. Here's where we're actually going to complete this square. We're going to bring the squared outside the parentheses and cut the middle term in half. So here's what I mean by that. I'm going to leave the 3 outside, don't touch it. Take this squared outside the parentheses, and then I'm going to cut this middle term in half. So this middle term is a negative 2x. If I cut that in half, I get negative 1. So I brought the squared outside, and I cut that coefficient in half to get x minus 1 squared. This should look pretty familiar. We did do this cutting in half process back in chapter 2. And we're going to do the same thing here. Bring the squared outside, and then cut this in half. Oh, hello. I totally did math error. Hello. Let me go back. If I take a 3 out of 4, that's 4/3, not 2. I don't know what I was doing. I was cutting in half already, apparently. So, if I took a 3 out of 4, that's 4/3, not 2. There we go. So now if I cut 4/3 in half, that gives me 2/3. If you're getting lost on all this mental math, don't worry. You have a calculator. You have a calculator on your entire final. You can just plug these numbers into your calculator. 4/3 divided by 2, get the same answer. Still have not touched my 4 outside. So now, step 4 is I'm going to actually FOIL or distribute or multiply everything So I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to write it as x minus 1 times x minus 1. And I'm going to take this one and write it as y plus 2/3, y plus 2/3. And I'm going to multiply all of this stuff out. FOIL it out, distribute it out. Now, you can distribute the 3 into here first, get 3x minus 3, and then you can distribute those together. Or you can distribute the x minus 1's together and put the 3 in at the end. Either way, you should get the same answer. I personally like to distribute these first and then put the 3 in at the end, but you really can do it either way. So if I distribute all that, x squared minus 1x minus 1x is minus 2x, and a minus 1 times a minus 1 is a positive 1. Do the same thing over here. And then I'm going to put my 3 back in, 3x squared minus 6x plus 3, and 3y squared plus 4y plus 4/3. Now, you'll notice very quickly that this is looking very similar to what I started with. Started with the 3x squared minus 6x. There's my 3x squared minus 6x. Started with the 3y squared plus 4y. There's my 3y squared plus 4y. And you'll notice that these are the parts that are extra. Those extra parts happen when I move the squared outside. When I move that squared outside, this extra piece appears, or it's created. So what I want to do is step 5, get rid of the extra piece. So here's what I mean by get rid of it. If this is a positive 3, I can get rid of it by subtracting 3. And now positive 3, subtract 3, it's gone. I got rid of it. This is a positive 4/3. I can get rid of it by subtracting 4/3. And you'll notice I'm putting these in my column that don't have any letters. So this is my x's, this is my y's, this is my neithers. And now that 3 got rid of that 3, that 4/3 got rid of that 4/3. So now those are gone, and I'm all balanced. I'm actually done completing the square. So I'm going to actually write out what I've got. This line right here at step 3 is your answer. That's what we want. So let's write out what we've got. I have 3, and then I have an x minus 1 squared. Then I have a 3 and a y plus 2/3 squared. And then I have 4 minus 3 minus 4/3, which is a negative 1/3. Now, at this point, you've technically completed the square. Complete the square check. You're done with that step. The last step is to go from here to here. So whatever equation you're working with, in this problem in 5.2, we're doing circles. So this is our circle equation. But if you're in 5.3, we're going to do the parabola equation, 5.4, the ellipse equation, 5.5, the hyperbola equation. Whatever equation it is, your last step is to do algebra to get this equation to look like this form. And you'll notice we're not quite there yet. So the first thing I'm going to do is I notice in this equation I have r squared on the other side of the equal sign. So I'm going to bring this 1/3 over to the other side. So now it looks more like an r squared. Now, last step I'm going to do, I don't have any numbers in front of these parentheses. So I'm going to divide these by 3 so that I can get rid of those numbers. And remember, dividing by 3 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/3. So I'm going to multiply by 1/3 on the other side just to make sure I keep everything balanced. So those 3's go away. I have x minus 1 squared plus y plus 2/3 squared equals 1/9. Now that looks like a circle. So we can see our H and our K for our center. And we can see our radius right there. Now, remember for our center, we flip the signs. So this is going to be +1, -2/3 is our center of our circle. And remember that this is r squared. So r squared equals 1/9. So I'm going to square root that. I'm going to square root 1/9 in our calculator to get that r, our radius, is 1/3. So this is a very little circle. Has a radius of only 1/3. Very small. But that is how we complete the square. Like I said, these 5 steps are probably the most important part of today's lesson. We're going to be doing these 5 steps every day this chapter. The only difference is once we get to here, we're going to make this part look like the equation for that lesson. So for 5.2 today, we did these steps to get it to look like a circle equation. But in the future, we'll do different steps to get it to look like whatever equation we need. So there we go. That's probably the hardest part of today's lesson. In the last video we're going to do, or I think we have 2 more videos, we're going to do examples 4 and 5.